Welcome everyone back to the Pommy and Oz channel. Hope we're all doing really well. If you're new around here, just do me a favour, hit that like button, hit that subscribe. It really does help the channel out. So thank you very much for the support you've shown recently. We've really grown indefinitely. Is that the right word? I think it is. If it's not, I don't really care. You know what I mean. So thank you very much. Honestly, I really do appreciate the support, the messages, the comments, the likes, the shares. You're all good guys and girls in my book. So thank you very much. And we're here today to talk about the VFL, which I think is probably the most, in my opinion, the most exciting it's ever been from a Carlton perspective, where we're actually looking at what's going on, if you get what I mean. So obviously, the results aren't good, but I always think it's really good to look in there. And this game here against Richmond was a real VFL game, to be honest, where if you've watched this season, we're almost playing on a script. So it was an interesting one because Carlton now are ranked bottom. It moved Richmond into the finals, and you really saw the cohesion of Richmond versus the Blues, particularly in the middle of the park. You really saw how much that makes a difference. And when I look at Richmond, Richmond have got real steady VFL players mixed with real speculative picks. And what you can see there is there's a little bit of togetherness. You can see watching Steely Green, watching their players, there was a real onus on these guys have played a lot of football together. Campbell Gray, he looked really good as well, and I'm surprised that Campbell Gray isn't talked about enough. His 4 goals were amazing, but I think more to that for me as well was his ability to get involved and really turn the game. 11 score involvements, most on the ground. His pressure was good. He's really one to watch if you're a Tigers fan. He did look a class above, a proper key forward there. Their mid-season player looking the goods there. Other players to note, I really watched their midfield, and Lockie Wilson, Joel Garner, Thompson Dow, they kind of did what they wanted at times, their ability to work in and around the traffic. And you can see that synergy that's really been building there at Richmond. And that makes me ask the question, like, I always find it funny when people talk about the VFL, they're like, oh, we're bottom and shit, our depth can't be that good. And it's like, well, I think in an ideal world, there would probably be about 6 players who probably should have been playing VFL from day one in the year if everyone was fit. And I think that when you look at the injuries and the players that are out, that they're really starting to show some frailty as well. Some of the players that are returning, which does worry me, which I would say here that someone sent me a message. Do you think Nick Austin's really good at recruiting juniors? He seems more of a aged player. And I don't think that's fair, to be honest. I think that the aged players, we probably need this VFL recruitment, some aged players here. I look into our VFL and it's like, what are they learning from? And at the moment, you're starting to really see very raw talent losing its legs, which is normal. Because they've been overworked. And then you're starting to see players that are kind of been really safe, for me, for a want of better words. And I think our game system is really, really exciting for a young player because I think it allows you to be a bit ostentatious with the ball movement, a little bit bold and brash. And I'm not seeing it enough for me in the VFL. Someone really needs to step up. And it seems every week we're going to be talking again about someone who has just suddenly stepped up this week. Some of them have been on the list a long time, so I want to see someone really grab the bull by the horns. Like, I watched Thompson Dow's game, and I think probably only one AFL-listed player from the Blues had that type of game where I was like, okay, you're here to play. You're here to take a chance and try and break your way into the seniors. Where the other guys, I feel like there should be a little bit more. There really should be a little bit more, especially with the experience they have at this level. And let's get into them straight away. Jack Carroll, heavily linked with West Coast Eagles. And this is a really interesting one here because I watched Jack Carroll and I think you've been here a while. Do you know what I mean? I think people forget, and I don't want to pick on him because this is all meant to be constructive, but I was watching Jack Carroll's game and my brain started to tell me, hang about, he's been around. Do you know what I mean? He's been on the list 2020, so it's 4 years. So we're really talking about a guy now that should be looking at that next step. should be thinking to himself, okay, this is where I am now. This is where I'm going to be. I am on the precipice of AFL listing. And he's shown little bits in the AFL when he's came in earlier this year. But I start to think in the VFL, this guy now should be thinking, nah, I'm taking over now. This is my job. This is where I'm about. And I'm now going to be the next guy. And I look at players taken around him in that draft. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's always a good starting point. You've got to go, right, let's have a look in that draft. And although he was a 40 pick, I think in reality, he's probably a 22, 23 for that year because he was a year younger. And then I think let's look at their midfielders there. And you've got players like Max Holmes, who, yes, he's been played off halfback. He's moved into the midfield now. Got Braden Cook. There's players for me, Sam Berry. I feel like at this stage of his career, I should be able to look at Jack Carroll and go, right, you're a pure inside midfielder. You're tough. This is what you do. Or I should be able to say, right, you're an outside midfielder that can pinch it in there. And I still feel like a little bit like his draft cast. I'm not quite sure what he is. And that kind of worries me when I look at the makeup of our senior team, because I feel like you can guarantee who everyone is. And I would love to be able to say, right, he's the next Patrick Cripps. He's not as good as Patrick Cripps, but that's going to be the role he plays. Or he's the next George Hewitt. And he's not either of them. Or he's a good little stopgap, which will allow Chera and Walsh to rotate a bit more on the outside. It feels there, and these were pretty strong numbers for him as well. 7 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 7 tackles. I'd love to see him in that midfield. He's now got the support with Cooper Lord. And I just feel at times it's not very controlled. It feels like I'm watching a first-year player. A lot of them kicks are hack kicks and scrub kicks. It was a decent game, but a guy of Jack Carroll's ability, who has all the ability in the world, I feel like these are the type of games he grabs the game by the scruff of his neck. And I feel at times he was overrun there. And I feel when I watch him in the AFL, it's like that in the VFL. It's like either really good or, ooh, what's that? He needs to find that boundary level. And it felt like the read of the game was off. And it's the last couple of times I've watched Jack Carroll. It feels like the read of the game is off. The situation is not quite there. I'm expecting him to be like the Adam Chera of the VFL. He's controlling the play. He's the metronome. He's the tempo setter. And I didn't feel like he bossed the midfield. Felt like this was just a real solid game. It gave me a lot of Nick Graham vibes about it, where I was kind of watching it going, okay, you're probably above VFL level, but you ain't getting this time in the AFL. And that's what I was really looking at. Corey Durden, he obviously went off, didn't play the full game, shoulder injury. We found out that it was a shoulder injury now. So the game up till that point, though, this was a really interesting one because I really do like Corey Durden. And it felt like this was a bits and piece game. His intent is definitely there. He runs around. He's got a lot of energy. I'd love to know what the coaches say to him, though. That's the really big thing. Like, what are they trying to look out for him? Because I don't feel when I watch Corey Durden play VFL, there is a defined role. And if there is, that worries me. But the 2-week shoulder injury is probably underlined we won't see him in the seniors, which is probably good for the VFL. Even though they're not playing finals, it would be great to see him get some like literal continued game time. You can definitely see the effects of Jack Carroll and Corey Durden in the fact of our injury list that they've been 1 minute playing, 2 minutes in the seniors, week off, not really getting that area. And that's a big thing for me in the VFL recruitment this week. It's really interesting because for me, it's like when you talk about VFL numbers, for me, it's a bit like there's this internet fascination at the moment of, like, I run a memes page or I run like a Facebook group, and then they compare their amount of subscribers to, say, a podcast or a YouTube thing. They're similar things, but one's offering a service and intelligence and the other one is just a meeting place. It's 2 different levels. And anyone could have an Instagram thing, be relatively attractive and post semi-suggestive photos and get more than someone who is going to talk and educate you about politics or something. It's the nature of the beast. That's the difference between VFL and AFL. Kind of similar thing. Skill level is incredibly difficult. And this is the thing with Corey Durden. I need to see him just get some game time, full games and really manage it, because this small forward area was suddenly fluxed, where you'd probably say there was 5 guys fighting for 3 spots. Now the spots look pretty locked in, and you're going to offer a point of difference. And I feel like Corey Durden burns a lot of energy without any reward. So gutted for him, 4 out of 10. It's harsh to rate him. Caleb Marchbank is a really fascinating thing, because I feel like the Caleb Marchbank people were judging him on and the Caleb Marchbank he is now are 2 different players. And I watched this game, and at times they worked him out quite quickly. They really did. You had the dummy lead, Steely Green would get in front of him, or the one-on-one. This was a big issue for me. The pressure, knew when he had the ball, he had it 11 times, turned it over, only 55% efficiency. That kicking that everyone knows him for is gone. And then when you look at Kemp and you look at McGovern, you're like, this is going to be really tough to get back in. He tried to play that more McGovern role, and this is what we talked about in the ratings. McGovern's now become more of a lockdown defender as opposed to that expressive player because of the form of Kemp. And this was VFL level, so like all due respect, and I'm sure if there's Richmond people in there, they'll agree with me, Campbell Gray and Sam Davidson, we talked about Sam Davidson a lot. I thought he might be a smoky for the mid-season draft. Campbell Gray was taken. These aren't exactly AFL level forwards as of yet. They're very good VFL players, but in the AFL, you're looking at like 4th, 5th string key forward. You're looking at a developing player. Marchbank should be battering these guys. Like, I'm like humdingering. I know the midfield isn't as good in the VFL, but also the skill level of the forward depreciates quite big. And that kind of concerns me a little bit. Like, we're going to talk about some other key defenders today, and they kind of showed me that, yes, they belonged at this level. Felt like Marchbank's got another level to go. Now, I know he's coming back from injury. He did some nice things on the deck, but at this stage of Marchbank's career in the VFL, he ain't a pup. He's in the late 20s. He's breaching that area. He should be dominating, and he didn't. Jackson Binns for me this year, it's been a real interesting thing because Carlton are trying to float him and give him a little bit of je ne sais quoi. And this was 28 touches at 67%. Real hard-working forward and back this year. Real credit to him that his defence is amazing. But this felt very Lockie O'Brien last year. It felt like a boy who is above the level, going through the motions. I'm looking at Jackson Binns, and a man of his talent with his pace and his skill set should be looking at Richmond and going, nah, you know what? I'm having a go today. I'm taking it on. And he felt like he played within himself, which I don't blame him. I mean, he's probably a little bit disappointed that he hadn't played seniors. I want to see him go up the next level, though. I've seen Jackson Binns do this. I've seen a lot of Jackson Binns do this. And he's an incredibly talented boy, an incredibly talented young man. So I want to see a little bit more from Jackson. And it was a 6 out of 10 for me. David Cunningham, still the managed minutes. This was one of them games where he flirted with being exceptional. And you could see it was managed minutes. He didn't play 100% of the game time. His tackle pressure was immense. You could see that he was one of the few that I could say you understand what it takes to play senior football. Still finding his feet, and I wouldn't give him time. It was a 5 out of 5 5.5 game. I like some of the link-up play and things like that, but then I was thinking, this is Elijah Hollins. And it's night and day at the minute. Can you play to Elijah Hollins? You'd probably move Elijah back in on the ball full time, play him pinch hitting forward mid. David Cunningham, you get an extra rotation. He's a player here I'm looking at that I feel the next 4 weeks is integral. Just put your stamp on the game. You are a class above, and he was dancing and he bought himself time. He's a very incredibly talented footballer. Returning from injury, I think this week will be good. Harry Lemmy, finally, we talked about it last week. This guy's due a big run. Few missed out there. His leading patterns were good, and you can see he's working with Harry Mackay a lot because his forward pressure was really good. His work on the deck was really strong. The 5 tackles, 3 goals, 5 behinds. He's got a really good read of the play. The midfield starting to help him there, particularly Cooper Lord, creating that space, allowing us to burst through stoppage, getting that early entry. There's something in it here, and he's starting to build, and we'll probably see the fruits of our labour mid-year next year. Obviously, he's a very late pick, but there is something about Harry Lemmy. He's starting to build. He starts to belong at this level. Obviously, key forwards and rucks, they age half the speed of a midfielder. So I like what I'm seeing from Harry, and he didn't look too out of place here. And I think another year, some more of Mum's pie and chips, he'll be right. Lewis Young, this is what I say about Caleb Marchbank. For me, he's above the pecking order when you're looking at stopgap for an injury to a key defender, because 17 touches, 82.4%. He's massively working on that disposal as well, looking a lot quicker. The 12 marks, he did look strong. He did look the strongest of the backline bass. Another guy we're going to talk about in a minute. Tried to set up attack. He stayed at home. He didn't take too much risk. Still has them moments, them little moments, I think, of just reading the situation, particularly in a spoil situation, but he is working through it. 6 out of 10 for me. I didn't mind it. Like this felt to me like someone that is going to belong in the VFL, but would be ready for 2 or 3 games in the seniors. Should there be an injury or should there be a knock? And I don't feel uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? Like at the moment with Marchbank, no disrespect to him, still feel like he's trying to find himself, where Lewis Young felt like he owned what he was, which is a very solid backup. Rob Monaghan, he tired early. Do you know what I mean? He looked tired. Managed minutes as well. Do you know what I mean? He did have a knock a couple of weeks ago, and it felt like it affected him here. 4 disposals, 50% disposal efficiency. 3 tackles, though, working hard in that forward line. This is, again, I want to see this guy come at halfback for me. I think you need to get him involved. He's game, but I don't think forward is the position for him. I feel like behind the ball, it's more like the Gaelic rules football. Love to see that. I think just play, especially with Billy Wilson, I thought this was the opportunity with him out, giving that little conduit play, trial him down there in the back pocket where most of the Irish guys start. I think there might be something there because his defence looks really solid. It's his offence that I feel is a little bit weak at the minute. And some of them touches, I think that's the best way to learn. He's going to get direct feedback off the back pocket when he makes a mistake, as opposed to the forward line where the pressure probably is not there. Cooper Lord, there was one saving grace. This kid looks quite the player. And it's almost like watching George Hewitt in the VFL. George Hewitt, or a bit of bam bam about him. Real game, real strong, creating lanes, second, third efforts, 9 tackles. He was a constant menace. No one got through him. This kid's got something. This one's one to watch here. I can see him playing AFL next year. Put on a bit of size and learn from these. The fact he's learning off 2 of probably the best players in the league at what they do. Cripps being one of the best inside midfielders and Hewitt being that like defensive stopping type midfielder. There's something about him. He's really composed. He's really tough as well. He's up for the fight. He flies the flag for his teammates. I really like Cooper Lord. Really do. Sam Durden, he did really impress me. 10 intercept possessions. This guy looked to peel off and looked to dominate, and at times did make Davidson and co look stupid. You could see there was that AFL intuition in there. You could see there was that long time I've been there and I've done it. And this is something that I implore the VFL side to do. It's okay using this as a second chance player. Ferranto and stuff look really good and are making a name for themselves that they could be late rookie picks next year or late draftees themselves who were missed in the draft. You need a good balance of your 28, 30-year-olds who have been in state football. I'd love the Blues next year to go like after a Crossley, a Braden Crossley at Ruck, and say, this is the Ruck standard, right, boys? Go after them, Boyd Woodcock and players like that. Real good state footballers will help these guys develop. You can't rely on the AFL players who are senior players dropping down and creating that little bit of leadership core. And Sam Durden did look quite a leader down there. You could see him. He was genuine in it. And that's where I'm looking at Caleb Marchbank. I want him to do that because I feel like he's more talented than all the backmen that we've got in that VFL list. Add that leadership. Be brave. Speak. Use your voice. But Sam Durden, solid game. And I really do like the fact that he was trying to get them more direct kicks. 7.5 for Dom McCoo. We've been really hard on Dom because we like seeing his skill sets. And finally, we saw him bring his weapons to play. And that was great to see. Real good user of the ball. Looked to play the give and go, which turned me on. And his intercept marking, it gave me Kemp vibes. This guy is quick. This guy is mobile. And we really saw Dom in a game situation where they were getting hammered, looked to take the game on, take the incentive. And the most experience we have is in this back line. These are mostly AFL players. Great to see Dom express himself. He needs to do this for the next 5-6 games for me. Really, really focus on that till the AFL season because that is why we took a punt on him. They are the skill sets for him. It's a good start for him. Great that he's finally broken the shackles. I want to see it more and more and more. And that's my one concern with playing all these AFL players down there, that some of our developing guys won't get the chance. But this was a good game from Dom. Playing loose, backing himself to get ahead of the ball, and he did each time. Died off in the second half a little bit, but I really did like his game this week. Ashton Moyer, this is where it's a shame we've lost someone like Ben Crocker, because it feels like it needs a forward there to control that forward line. Liam McMahon is still a baby, and he's definitely the general of that forward line. I liked his tackle intent this week and his defensive intent, but this was a player that I felt a bit like Motlop last week. This, I know he's a baby, but he's got God's greatest gift. He can make things out of nothing. And partly that's down to the movement. I felt like Binns could have targeted him more. Binns went inside 50 as opposed to going the short up lead. Ashton needs to impose himself. At times, there's a bit of Jack Martin about him, and he's waiting for it to be on a silver platter. And when you're in the VFL, I'm expecting you to say, nah, I'm taking this opportunity. I'm demanding it. I need to see him be a bit more vocal. I do like him, though. I really do. And there is time. He used the ball well, as you can see. He didn't make a mistake, but I need him to lead higher up. I'd love to see the Blues play him as a pure high half forward, as a conduit between the midfield. He took his goal well, and do you know what I mean? Like you say, 3 of your 4 touches been scoring involvements with a goal. It's a pretty good game, but I felt like he went anonymous, and I felt like there was more. This game, usually I defend him. I felt there was more he could do. And then we finish Alex Murkoff. Now, Alex Murkoff here, people might say, Palm, you're a little bit harsh, man. Hear me out. He played Oliver Hayes-Brown, Joel Garner, and Campbell Gray in the ruck. Now, none of these 3 we've mentioned here are, with all due respect, close to an AFL game. Oliver Hayes-Brown was playing basketball a couple of years ago. Joel Garner is solid, if anything, at what he does, but he's nowhere near AFL level. And Campbell Gray's just been brought in the MSD, and he's more of a key forward that can ruck. So look at Rory Lobb. Now, he got the 40 hit-outs, but I felt around the ground, this is where he really showcased himself, because I think all the rucks involved in this game are learning their game really early, particularly Oliver Hayes-Brown. And I felt like Hayes-Brown looked like Max Gawn at times around the ground compared to him. And I know 2 different dimensions, and Oliver Hayes is a lot more fit, but he has been there a while, Murkoff, and he has learnt the game. And again, this is the case. We've got Mark Pitternet to do this, and Mark Pitternet is relatively young for a ruckman, and touch wood, a very clean bill of health. Need to see a bit more from Murkoff, and I was really hoping with these injuries and stuff we've had, he's going to be a solo ruck. He's going to really learn his craft, and for me, it was a bit disappointing for him. He was one that could have really given us some ascendancy with his body, and at times I didn't really notice him after the ball had hit the tag. And that's a shame. And this is a real exposure of his weaknesses. But all in all, it was a real poor feast. I'd love to come here and say everything's gravy in the Garden of Blues, and it's not. Being bottom of the ladder, there's a reason. Do you know what I mean? There's a reason. There's a reason we're bottom of the ladder. Cohesion is a big part of it, though. But some of these AFL guys need to listen to Chincotta's interview on this show and hear about stepping up and really taking it. I didn't see that. It felt like it was very safe and cosy at times from the boys. So, going to be an interesting one. Another week, another chance to express. Hopefully we get some AFL players into there. I'd love to see Cotters get some fitness. Obviously, he's been with a foot injury, so obviously he won't be doing too much running, so his cardio will be down. Be interesting to see when them boys return, if these guys up the ante a little bit. But definitely lacking some leaders there. Peace, love and light. Palm out.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella